Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of an experiment called Life with Alex McKenzie. That's me. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Punchline Nutrition. Go and check out Neuro Boost. That is our nootropic. So I take it before I do a podcast, before I do any writing, go on stage. Now, we don't guarantee that it'll make you smarter, but we do guarantee it will make you less dumb. All right. So go to Punchline Nutrition, check that out, grab yourself some Neuro Boost. You're going to love it. And also, the Hunger for Laughs comedy tour is now on sale right here. I am on day 3 of 14 of a water fast to raise awareness for the Hunger for Laughs tour. We got a bunch of the best comedians in the country on the show. So, and we're traveling around all over BC and Alberta, and we've raised over $50,000 so far for nonprofits through the Hunger for Laughs tour. So go to hungerforlaughs.com, use coupon code ATJ. You'll save a little bit of money. And yeah, all right. Now, the real reason we're here. I'm very excited to have this man on. So he is an author, an entrepreneur, he's now comedian. Please welcome Ken Cox. Ken, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited. Thanks for joining me. It helps me while I'm in my seclusion here on the fast.
14 days is insanity.
Yeah, it's every year I'm like, I'm not doing that again. I'm like, I'll do 5 or like 7. And then I don't know, man. I keep telling myself, I'm like, oh, you got to do 14 again. But every year I keep saying it's the last year. Like this year, I'm like, I'm only on day 3 and I'm like, this is the last time I'm doing this.
Yeah, I do 3 day fasts quite often, and the that 40 to 70 hour window is pretty amazing. But
Yeah.
uh, after that would be rough, man.
Yeah. Well,
Congratulations. Good luck.
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. There's a couple things. I think I find up to 3 days is hard after that. Like today, I'm feeling way better than I have the last 2 days. Um, I find, I guess they say your body's like fully in ketosis at that point, and you're just burning fat, so you actually get some fuel. Um, I find after day 3 is like pretty good. You kind of get in a pattern, the hunger pains are gone, and you're just kind of cruising. But after day 10, it gets crazy again. Because then your brain is just like, dude, why are we doing this? Like, nobody is making us do this. It's like, it's not like your family's held hostage, and if you eat a sandwich, they're going to die. So then your brain starts tricking you. But I also I know a lot of people who do fast and they're always like, oh, I don't know how you do that long. I have a huge advantage because I'm in an RV in the middle of nowhere. Like I could
Yeah.
probably turn the camera and show you out the window. See?
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm just like secluded from everyone and society and do a lot of sleeping and just sitting out on that chair staring at the lake and the mountains.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, how did you get into you're doing some comedy now? I see you're talking about hitting the open mic scene after 40.
Yeah. So actually, at 50, so I wrote Reclaim Sobriety, and it got bestseller in a couple categories. I didn't want to write the book, but it kept coming out, and
Right.
released it. And I had a lot of fun getting it published and going through that process and promoting it and getting the bestseller and all that stuff. And I was like, well, I want to do another book. So we put some ideas together, and we're writing 2 new books: Entrepreneur Fight Club, and then that's kind of a bigger group collaboration.
Right.
And then Cox Out Raw and Uncut is what I've my personal project that I've been working on, and it has been just a ton of fun. And it started with um, just self identity kind of homework, right? And I was going to open mics to just kind of research about these kids that are standing up and being vulnerable in public and seeing what that was like. And after months of kind of researching and doing that, somebody one of the comedians kind of hit me and said, "Hey, when are you going to go up?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm not doing that." And he's like, "You're here every week, right? Why don't you try it?" And I'm like, "Well, let's see what happens." And I did it and fell in love immediately. So now the book is expanded, and I'm like, after a few weeks of going through, kind of changing what I was thinking, how the book was going to lay out,
Yeah.
I decided, how cool would it be to really eat my own dog food, tell what I tell entrepreneurs, to just document their process and put it out there, if I did that with stand-up comedy. And it's been, I'm just over 2 months in, and I'm having at 50 years old, I feel like I'm opening a whole new chapter in my life and having a ton of fun. So,
Yeah,
and I'm
dude.
just sharing that with the world. So I hit at least 2 mics a week.
Yeah.
Um, I'm
Where,
getting
where are
better.
you where are you located, Ken?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. It's an amazing community. It's tough to get into the community, but if you want to and you have some discipline, then the community will open its arms for you pretty quickly. So which is amazing.
Yeah, it's always a grind, like just when you first get into a scene or in a new city, just trying to get on all the mics and get spots and on stage time. And
Yeah.
how are you finding the mics going?
The mics are great, man. I have some really great advantages to this whole game, right? I have a fairly popular podcast in a completely separate genre, right? General business. I went to broadcasting school. I went to journalism school.
Right.
I do, business talks quite regularly, but I'd never focused anything comedy related. It was all business and tech and all these things. Um, and when I was younger, I was in the entertainment industry, so I had a much, I transitioned from entertainment in 1999 to IT,
What
and kind of,
what were you doing in entertainment?
well, I was. That's a whole wild story. I went to a school called Broadcast Center, so I was DJing local radio, stuff like that, just kind of BS, pushing
And
stuff around. But I had a passion for
was
film and
this in
video.
St. Louis? Sorry.
Yeah, in St. Louis, but at St. Louis at the time, it was a 19 market, which was big, right? St. Louis
Right.
was a really big radio market back in the day. Not that I don't even think those things exist like radio markets. I'm sure they do.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's dying for sure. I notice radio
Yeah,
going down, especially like because I self-produce a lot of my comedy events. So we always do marketing and I notice like radio is like hanging on by a thread to try and get you to buy their stuff. And I also haven't seen very much return ever on my radio investment.
yeah, it's pretty bad. I did
Yeah.
a radio. I did a radio ad a couple years ago, and it did not. It was cheap, but it didn't.
Didn't
It didn't.
translate. Yeah.
So I was in film and videos was my passion then,
Yeah.
and still is like a big hobby of mine, film and video, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I worked it was called the Keel Center then. I think it's like Enterprise Center now. I was working there for the Jumbotron, and I got in a really bad accident. I got hit by an 18 wheeler, and I couldn't do video production anymore because the camera equipment was too heavy. And it took 18 months to rehab to kind of get back to where I was fully walking again.
Right.
So I moved over to more like management kind of stuff, right? Production manager, PA, second AD, that kind of role.
That's a pretty good move though. I get hit by a truck, you're like, well, you can't work on the floor. We're gonna make you a manager now. You're just the
Yeah. And then that translated into the music industry where I was stage managing and touring. So I did a nationwide tour with Suburban Noise Records,
yeah.
working stage managing for their bands, which was a blast. But when I got a job in IT in 1999 doing web hosting and stuff, and that's where I've been ever since. I fell in love with the creativity of building these websites for all these different companies and making them available for the world. I fell in love with that and started as the founder of a company in 2001, a web hosting company that I still run and operate today. So it's been a wild ride, but as the world's changing and I see a lot more solopreneurship is going to be coming on board in massive ways. The corporate infrastructure with AI and robotics is it's going to empower the person to create their own communities and their own resources and their own ecosystems.
Right.
So I really want to kind of show that to the world, right? And kind of lead by example and say, hey, this is how you can do it, and the old rules don't apply any longer.
Right.
You don't have to just go up and wait to be noticed or do something. You can create a platform and have books and CDs and records and stage time and talking and all these different platforms across the board, that a person with a little bit of grit can make a damn good living with doing the thing that they really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And I chose comedy was the closest thing that I hadn't jumped into that I had some of the other key assets for.
Right.
I figured, what the hell, let's go for it.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome, man.
And I
That
don't know what the question was. I might have gotten off track.
no, what did no, no, that's okay, dude. I'm full ADD myself. I'm like I start with something, I just trail off. No, what was the question was who knows? I don't remember either. But it was good. I remember it started with asking how you worked in entertainment.
Okay, so
Like,
yeah, a 35-year arch or 30-year arch of really quick how was entertainment.
yeah.
Um,
That's
it just
awesome about you though getting into comedy. I kind of had like you mentioned that comedy is like the one thing and you were talking about how you could like expand it and you don't need to wait for anyone anymore. There's not a certain avenue you can kind of self-produce. That was my whole thing. Like so I used to be a power engineer and an instrumentation mechanic and I worked at a pulp mill up in northern BC in Canada. And then as I was getting close to 30, I just knew I didn't want to work there anymore. I was like, I'm not doing this the rest of my life. Like while I was going to trade school and stuff, it was good because you were like working towards something. So I'm like, oh, I'm getting a trade, I'm getting skilled labor. But then as soon as I finished, I was like, okay, now you just keep walking in here every day and doing the same thing for the next 40 years till you retire. I mean, now knowing what I know now, I could have probably started a business as a tradesman and done that. But I didn't have any business savvy before. But comedy, I was like, oh, I'm quitting my job. And everyone was like, what are you going to do? They'd be like, what else are you going to do? There's nowhere else you're going to go that you can make money like this. And, what are you going to do? And I always just said, like, I don't know, but I know it's not this, like I'm not doing this, but I don't know what it is yet. And I was trying everything. I was like, oh, maybe I could become a dirt biker or like I was like skydiving. I got into skydiving and I was like, oh, I'll be a skydiving instructor. What was another thing I wanted to do was who knows, do DJ for a minute. I was like, oh, maybe I could just be a DJ. Uh and I was just trying to figure out, I was trying everything. Oh, I was trying like MMA. I was like, oh, I'll be an MMA fighter. That was in my early 20s when I was decided I was going to try that. Uh, but then comedy, it was the one thing because everyone's like, oh, was it your burning desire, your passion? And I'd say, like, not really. Like, I always loved stand up, always did. Like, from the time I was like 12 years old, I used to watch it on Just for Laughs all the time. I'd get home from school and I'd recite it to my grandma and stuff. But then, and jokes, but it wasn't until I was 26 that I got my first time to get on stage. And it was actually like, comedy was the one thing that I was a hobby that I never wanted to quit. Like there were periods of time where I didn't do it for 6 months. Like when I first started, I was like, I don't know, it was kind of fun, but I don't really care because I didn't like it that much. Because the problem is when you first start, you're not that good. So you're just bombing on stage over and over, and you're supposed to try make it fun. And I'm like, this isn't that fun. Um, but it was the one hobby I say that was like that I didn't want to quit and that had an easy way to monetize. So it was like if you could get 50 people into a room, to I'll give you $20, that's $1,000. I'm like, if you can do that a couple times a week, now you're making decent money. And so it kind of just like grew from there. And then it was like, okay, even if I could never be funny enough to do this, I could always produce the shows and just kind of host or open and hire headliners to do them. And then over time, it just progressed where I was like, okay, I can headline now. And then I just started doing my own shows.
yeah, a lot of what I'm writing about now is just trying to define what is stand-up comedy and how do you know if you're doing good at this stage. And I think it's I come from entertainment world. I started a boxing school when I was 40. I still run it today. I've been competing in boxing for a long time. I know when I've done good there, right? I get a
Right.
belt, I get a trophy, and there's nobody telling you if you've done good or bad here. And it's this weird kind of thing. And I think it's do it however feels best for you. Try to connect with somebody, and if you get one person to laugh, I think you did your job.
Yeah, that's definitely the beginning of it. I find all the time is just like who do you want to be and what do you want to kind of do? Well, I don't know. I guess the very beginning I was just trying to figure out how to write jokes. Like I
Okay.
was just like, how do I get a laugh? And it didn't matter. It didn't have any meaning. And then once you figured out how to do that, then you're like, okay, what do I actually want to talk about now? What do I actually want to try and say when I have a stage and an audience?
Yeah, it's wild. And I like to tell my stories, right? I've lived a full life around
Yeah,
wild, crazy shit, right? So wrap those in, and then as a boxing coach, and I've got other agendas to, you know, change the world and all that fun stuff in my fight against mega AI world. I can do that through comedy in a way that I can't do that through corporate America,
right.
which is super fun, right? I've not learned how to tell those jokes yet, but I get to work on that script and that narrative because also I think in a world where people are scared to death of AI, I have a symbiotic relationship with computers. I have 100,000 of them, right?
Really? You got that many computers?
Yeah, we own and operate data centers. That's what I do.
Right.
I'm basically married to a computer, right? I've had a keyboard at my lap since I was 7 years old.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I have this um, weird relationship with computers and IT and corporate world that I can talk about it in a different way,
How do you
and
think that,
solopreneurship, and hopefully take some of the edge off of this transition that we're going to on our planet at the moment.
right. So with your tech job, it's InLink, is that right?
Inlink.com is our consumer a small business platform for the like the solopreneur um, and micropreneur.
Right. And what
So
is
the
it that
5 person cleaning company, construction company, uh, HVAC company, that kind of stuff.
right.
Podcaster, right? We have stuff on there for them.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
it's that brand. Hosterian is our enterprise data center brand
And
that
that's
we
for like more bigger corporations?
that's like public library systems, airports, stuff like that that have large IT infrastructure loads that need to be run 24/7, 365 without interruption, that have staff to push the buttons when the buttons need pushed.
Right. Crazy. And how do you think that you'll have a crossover with comedy and then with your entrepreneur business, or not just your businesses? Like, do you think running those businesses will help transfer into trying to grow your comedy?
Yeah, so I think like all business, I think if you look at comedy like any other business, who am I going to serve? I think I can serve the middle-aged guy that's scared about losing his job, right?
Yeah.
And kind of make this transition, at least laugh at it, right? How ridiculous the world is. And I think I've got a lot of knowledge and motivation for the younger kids, right? Of, hey, you can kind of carve your own path. Yeah, you can't buy a house and sit on it like your grandpa did, but you can buy Bitcoin and create your own brand, and you can do it at breakneck speed with and use AI as a tool to empower you instead of thinking it's going to take your job away, because jobs are different. They're going to be different. It's not going to be this 40-hour clock in and pay your mortgage. Everything's got to change.
Yeah.
Um, and it's going to be scary. And I'm a professional at changing who I am and adapting to the environment moving forward. So hopefully my voice can soothe some minds as we go through this weird transition that we're going to go through.
Yeah. So do you think that like a lot of corporate jobs are just going away? Like corporate companies going to fall and we're going to go back to smaller like family business or kind of thing?
Trying not to get too philosophical. I think all things will always be happening, right? I think we're going to have the massive megas, but we have now the infrastructure for a solo person to, or a small group of 5, produce a show, have the video assets, have the visual assets, have the writing assets, have all of those assets to compete with those big guys at a level that we've never been able to compete before. So I think the indie creator, the independent business owner, it's their time to grow like never before. Um,
Yeah. I
and and my mission with Cox Out is to say, hey, this is maybe it's not comedy, maybe it's painting, maybe it's writing, maybe it's whatever, right? But take your passion and move forward, and you can execute these different modalities of business models, book, show, podcasts, all of these different models to live, and you don't have to own your brand, and you don't have to own the house.
Right. So your book Cox Out is basically like a guide to entrepreneurship. in whatever field people want to go into? Is that
No, I
no?
think no. It's
Well,
the book Cox Out is specifically. There's 3 volumes now. The
yeah.
first volume is why did I ever hide my masks from the public to begin with? So very young Carl Jung kind of thought process,
Yeah.
and using comedy to uncover those masks, and so it's all about self identity
Okay.
and how do you discover who you are as a human. The website and the blogging is kind of, hey, this is my journey in the public.
Right.
If you want to follow along, you can follow along. I'm every mic that I do. I write that night about that open mic, and then I have another section called Between the Mics, where it's just kind of like my life raw and uncut at the moment. Right, I'm going through massive life changes myself. Right, so
Right.
I talk about that kind of openly and publicly. Um, showing that in a world of AI and fakeness, I believe, and my hypothesis is that authenticity will sell better than anything else.
Yeah. Oh, I would agree with you there. I think that's the whole shtick. On my shows, so every show, I close with like a heartfelt speech kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
do like 45, 50 minutes of stand up, and then I usually sit on the stool. We put the lighting down, and I just kind of break it down, and I talk about what it was like my first year because I've got 2 specials out now, and I'm working on my third. And the first one was basically about quitting my job and what that's like. And then you sit down, and I talk about, like people talk about how it's scary to get out there and give up everything because I sold my house, everything. I bought this RV 6.5 years ago, and I've just still been driving around in it, doing shows ever since. And that's people's favorite part of the show generally. Most of the time, when people come up to me at the end, they're like, "Hey, man, I love the comedy. That was great, very funny." They're like, "But that thing at the end, that was like, oh man, I got to quit my job." And they're like,
Yeah.
"But
And that's fun.
it's my favorite part of the show every time." But I do always find, like, when I first started, I wasn't very funny. So I'm like, "Oh, I'm just a motivational speaker." And I'm like, that was basically what I was doing on stage. I'm like, I don't know if this is comedy. And that's what you were talking about, like, what is stand up? And I think stand up is such a broad form. Like, it's one area now that I think, like, with music, you have like country and rock and pop and rap and all the different genres. I think we're starting to get to a point that there's enough comedians that we're going to be able to start putting genres on comedy, you know?
Yeah, I find it amazing, right? So I went into this whole process like, oh, I'm an old guy. I know how to write. I've never written comedy, but I kind of like to goof off anyway. So, I'll just study some structures. I'm like, okay, if I can tell a story and I can drop a couple little laughs a minute and then try to get a good cliffhanger every 2 to 3,
Yeah.
that's a format that I can write out, right? And so that was my first 10 sets, right? Like wrote a script, execute it, try to practice it, move on. Then I see these other styles like, oh, the freestyle and the ad lib and the crowd work and the writing one liners was just blew my mind of how do I know I'm not stealing this from somebody else if I'm writing a sentence or 2 sentences, right?
Right.
Because authenticity is so like wildly important to me that
Of
that
course.
kind of shit just racks through my brain. Like, so I got to search like all over the place on this one liner. Does anybody else have this premise? Who's
Yeah,
doing
I
this?
generally find you can find it pretty quick. Like if you write a one-liner and then you put it into Google or somewhere, it'll pop up on Reddit pretty quickly or somewhere. So, because yeah, that's how I started was writing one-liners. I got a book called How to Write Funny, and I recommend it to everyone. It's Scott Dickers. It's called How to Write Funny. It was the best thing that ever happened for my comedy career, I would say, when I was learning. And he's actually was like the founder of The Onion, the satirical news network,
Oh,
The
yeah.
Onion. Yeah. So that guy. So he teaches you just how to write. Like you look at how tight they write and their headlines, how they have to be so punchy. So he taught that, and I would just write one-liners and put those online, and that's what I'd start doing. It was direct to camera. I'd just be like, in bed, I'm like a dirt bike, and then tell my joke and put those online, and those started getting some traction. Um, but yeah, there were times. What was the joke? One time, oh, the joke I thought that I wrote, and then I found out within 30 seconds as soon as we sat down. But we got to dinner. It was like me and an ex-girlfriend were going for dinner, and we couldn't find any parking spots. And then we had to park far away. And then we're like walking in, and I got that classic. It's like a classic joke where they're like parking relationships are like parking spots. Have you heard that one?
I have not.
Oh yeah. So they say like relationships are like parking spots. They're like, all the good ones are taken. The ones left are either too far away or they're handicapped.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So then I was like, oh, dude, I was like, that's great. And I was like, look at this great joke I had. And I sat down at dinner and I wrote it in and I searched. I'm like, oh, dude, that's like a stock street joke. Like, no wonder it came to you so easy, you know? And that's usually what it is. Anytime a joke comes to you too easy, you're like, ah, shoot.
Yeah, I think, with the storytelling kind of vibe, I don't have to worry about that nearly as much. These are my stories that I'm just punching in little spots, right? So
Yeah.
uh, I think for a beginning comic, that would be my biggest advice is just take one of your stories and try to make it funny and tell it to the audience, right? And see what
Yeah.
happens.
That's very Mike Birbiglia. Have you followed him at all?
I have not.
No, so you should look up Mike Birbiglia. He's like the best storytelling comedian out there and writer. And he actually had a lot of influence on John Mulaney as well. And John
Okay.
Mulaney is like really good. If you go watch John Mulaney's last special, was it called Baby J, maybe? But his is all about sobriety and going into rehab and stuff. It's really good. But it's one big long story arc. It's just basically like, hey, had to go into rehab. There was an intervention. I got to rehab. I got out of rehab, and here I am now. It's just like a perfect story arc, and with Joe
Right.
hanging off of it. And yeah, that's really good advice. With Birbiglia mentions like don't try make it funny at first. He's like just write the story. He's like write a story and then look at it and then start going through like okay, how can I make this funny, But like if you try to make it funny right from the get-go, but he's like just tell the story first and then
That's exactly my process. I tell the story, I record it, and I have it text to speech. So I
yeah,
have both of them down. I tell it over and over, and then I go through that text, and I'm like, okay, where can I put, because you're trying to take funny stories of going to jail or getting in fights and shit anyway, right? So
yeah,
they should have some, hopefully my son getting diagnosed with autism is, one of my favorite bits right now. So
right.
that kind of stuff, right? It's just fun, silly stuff that happens to you in life that you can, hopefully lighten for other people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. How old is your son?
He's 14 now.
He's 14. And how
He's been,
long has he been diagnosed now?
he got his diagnosis when he was 3.
Okay,
So
3, yeah. And
yeah,
what
we got early diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah. What's that been like?
Oh, wild ride. He's nonverbal
Yeah, okay.
and he's a flight risk. So we've had, some very scary moments of him escaping school and getting, leaving at 5 years old, he got out of the school and he, crossed city lines into another municipality. So it was like,
Oh,
two
terrifying.
counties and the state all involved in this crazy ass, probably $500,000 find my son adventure.
Yeah.
Uh,
An
you know,
expensive kid right there.
that kind of stuff. He's broken out of every school he's ever been in. Um, but he's just 99% of the time the happiest dude on the planet, man.
I
Just being cool, playing his games and having fun. So um, having a nonverbal son has taught me more about communication than anything else on this planet.
Yeah, isn't that wild? That's funny. I mean, I don't want to hijack it, but just thinking of like that's what I would say about my dog. Like my
Yeah,
dog didn't say a word, and I think that guy taught me more than anyone's ever taught me,
yeah.
which is
Just having to have the ability to communicate in some level when you don't have these noises that we throw from our mouths that embed data into your brain.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I like
right,
how
you
I
got
just did the
to
dog thing and compare your autistic son to my dog. What a jerk. Maybe my dog's autistic too,
Hey,
I don't
I
know.
can't say that I've never done it myself. Like,
What is there anything you learned that if someone else had an autistic child, what is one piece of advice you would give them? Something that you learned that you think helped you along the way?
practice gratefulness in a way that you've never even imagined, right? Because you're gonna have to deal with some weird shit. when a man has a son and it's your first son or only son in my case, you have these perceptions in your head of what's going to happen, right? Oh, we're going to play ball in the front yard. We're going to play football. I'm going to get to go, I'm going to get to drink beer in the bleachers on Friday night, football games, and,
Yeah.
like all of these things that you have in your head, and you don't get those. But you get something else, right? You get to learn to communicate with your son in a way that I don't think most people do. I have a relationship with my son that I don't have with my daughter, right? She's
Right.
verbal and tell me to fuck off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he can't. So we have to hug it out and those kinds of things. So it's profound, and look for the things, it's sad in some ways, but also my son's gonna be part of my life until I die, and my daughter probably won't be, right?
Right.
And I know that I'm going to get to have a different kind of relationship with him than most men don't get to have with their sons.
By
So
that you mean that he'll never live on his own, is what you're saying.
most likely, yeah,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So he'll be with me and his mom aren't together anymore, but we're still very friendly and stuff. So we'll be in each other's lives for forever,
Right.
which is something that I don't think everybody gets to believe, that they get to be friends with their son for longer than his 18th birthday.
Right. Yeah, I do notice I got a niece and nephew and they're getting older now. And yeah, they don't care about spending as much time with uncle as they used to, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's like a very good insight. Just try to spend time with your kids while you have them, you know? I think I'm lucky to have like my niece and nephew as like a learning curve. So when I do have kids, you're like, okay, here's some samples. What would I do different? What should I change?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to do the one thing, and that's love them.
Yeah.
Like, that. If you do that, then everything else will figure itself out.
Yeah.
So
That's what I think. I talk about that in my comedy for a lot of stuff. I think love is the answer. I think it's the answer to all of it out there, you know?
it is. It is the answer. Unfortunately, it's not the answer that our governments and societies take all the time.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
you know, people have different views on all the things. What do you do?
but we can do it, right? We can do it as humans, and at the street level, we can forget about what's happening at a state and federal and international level. Then we can
Dude, I avoid
actually
politics at all costs. I'm like, I don't even want to know what's going on. And then some people are like, well, you're part of the problem. I was like, I promise you I'm not. Just a guy in a van driving around trying to tell jokes. Promise you no one's like, you know who's a fucking problem? That guy in the van telling jokes. We need less of him out there. He's just That's like a whole goal in my life is honestly just to try not get in anyone's way. Like that's like a big part of my life. I'm like just try not to be in anyone's way. Like even at a crosswalk, like I run across the crosswalk, like screaming sorry. I'm like sorry. Like if I had to stop traffic, I'm like I didn't mean to do that. A lot of the time, I'll pretend I don't even have to cross the street so that cars don't have to stop. Like if I see a car coming, I'll act like I'm still walking so that they go by and then I'll cut back and cross. I just don't want to jam anyone up, you know?
I talk to my kids about, we talk about fear a lot and overcoming fear. But the other day we were talking about who's afraid of getting in trouble, and I was shocked at who rose their hand and who didn't.
Right.
And it was interesting, like, and I had considered like there's a whole concept of I don't do things because not because I'm afraid of the actual thing, but I'm afraid I'll get in trouble by some who's getting you in trouble.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. By some
I
sense.
understand like breaking the law, but like most stuff is,
Yeah. Well,
you
it's
know,
like a really good book by Byron Katie called Loving What Is. I don't know if you've
okay.
ever heard of it, but it's a really good book. It's a pretty hippie book, but she talks a lot about that stuff where it's like, you know, who actually did it really good? It's an old joke. I forget what he wrote, but it's the guy who the Mark Twain, right? Yeah,
Okay.
they give the Mark Twain Award away every year
Yeah.
to a comedian, right? So Mark
I
Twain.
just read the Mark Twain's Tom Sawyer. I just read it like last month.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. So he has a thing about where he says, I've been in or I've experienced some terrible things in my life, some of which have actually happened.
Yep.
And that's like kind of what that Byron Katie loving what is, what you're saying about afraid of getting in trouble. Like we build a story in our head, like, oh, I better not do this. That's not good. And it's like, no one really even cares, dude. Like, do whatever you want. And like most of the stuff you build up in your head is just that. Like it's your own fear, your own projection, or something that you have that you think that someone else put in there. Like, yeah, I don't know.
And there's no rules. Like you're living in a van.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Like there's no rules to this game, and you can play it however the hell you want to play it. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't know that most people know that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just I'm trying to think. So when I was quitting my job, what were the biggest hurdles for me? I would say like your parents are a big one, right? Like you don't want to let your parents down.
I
Yeah.
was an orphan.
And oh dude, I saw that in your thing. Why haven't we talked about that yet?
I was not really an orphan. I'm adopted.
Right. So how
Yeah.
about yeah, you want to talk about that, dude? I'm about to talk about my loving, amazing family and just shove that in your face. So maybe cut me off before and let's talk about your orphanage.
Yeah. I mean, my mom grew up rough, right? Massive abuse kind of stuff. My grandmother, um, was got in some trouble when she was very young. So she lost my mom and um, kind of stuff, like wild stuff. But basically, I was born homeless, and my cousin shipped in some money so that my mom could move me into the upstairs apartment of a bar. So I grew up in a bar till I
Oh,
was 2, and then she met my stepdad. We moved in together at 3. Got these weird brothers and sisters. When I was 7, they started the adoption process, but I was a pretty violent kid, and so then as the adoption process is starting, the government division of youth services kind of start stepping into our house, and they lose custody of me during this whole thing. So then the adoption finally went through when I was 13, but then I got in some trouble again.
so did you have to live, where did you live from 7 to 13? So
I lived with them the whole time.
okay, so
We're
you're with
talking
your
maybe total, like in detention centers and stuff like that, maybe 300 days,
okay, but you were
like
living with
on and off, like through the
right
whole lifespan,
through
right?
through the 13 years you were yeah. But then you were just so I fall because I'm very naive to this. So you were with living with your mom,
Yeah.
but still up for adoption?
Yeah.
Like how does that like that
Because they were the adoption process was going on, and then division of youth services started investigating other stuff, right? Because
but
I was
who starts the adoption process? Is it your mom being like, I
they
can't take
yes,
care of
they
this
started the
kid?
process.
Okay, so your mom's like, I can't take care of this kid. We need to get put him up for adoption.
It was
But
different then. It was we're gonna adopt him as a family unit instead of a person.
explain that. I don't understand. I haven't ate in 3 days, so maybe my brain just ain't following.
At
But
the time, they looked at things differently than they look at it now. So I was her son,
yeah.
and they had to find my biological father, and he had to sign off on it, and all kinds of crazy things had to happen. Uh,
Okay, and then
and then during that process, while they were starting the adoption process to have my name changed so that I was Kenny Schneider, I'd be Kenny Cox now. I got in some trouble at school, and things started happening.
when
So
you're saying
that
adopt,
prolonged the adoption process.
right. So who was trying to adopt you?
My mother and my stepfather.
Okay, sorry. That's where the confusion was coming from.
Yeah.
I was like, your mom has you and is like, I need to give this kid up for adoption.
No, they
Oh,
were trying to
they were
change
trying
my
to,
name
right,
and give my stepdad legal rights
right,
as my father. And
right,
but during which should have been just really fast, right? Like
right,
file the paperwork. But me being the asshole that I am, got in a whole bunch of trouble and spread, and then got the government more involved than they needed to be. And
right.
and I was sick. I had some health issues and stuff like that that they were worried about. And I was not a rule follower by far. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so
So
I like to borrow things.
yeah, yeah, just Steeler, little jacker.
Yeah. We learned how to take cars at a pretty early age.
Oh wow, dude! I never stole a car. I stole a pair of football gloves from Sport Check when I was younger, and I got arrested for that. But never got anything. They just basically like put you in cuffs and then call your mom, and they're like, "Come pick this kid up," and then they're like, "You're not allowed at the mall for 6 months."
Yep.
I'm like, "All right, fine. I won't be back." What's it like stealing a car? You've stole a car?
I never stole any. I borrowed some vehicles when I was young.
Yeah, yeah,
I
dude,
had every intention of them finding them wherever I left them.
dude, that's cool.
Like, well, it was a far walk from the mall back to my neighborhood,
Yeah, see?
right? And when it was cold, so yeah. And when you're young and you learn a new skill, then you use it too often.
Yeah, just trying to stay on top of it. Once just to check and make sure. I run on battery power and solar, so it's like I got to make sure I don't run out of juice here. And the whole podcast comes crashing down. It okay. So when you were an orphan, you weren't really an orphan then, though, right?
Really an orphan, no.
Right, because you had your mom still, but you were trying to get your stepdad. That makes a lot more sense. I worked with some guys who did that, who like adopted
Yeah,
their. I would have probably done that had I stayed with my ex. I was a stepdad for about 5 years in my early 20s, and
right.
to a little girl named Chloe, and she didn't have a dad. So she didn't have it wasn't even a dad on her birth certificate. So I probably would have ended up adopting her if I would have stayed with the mom and her. And that
Yeah,
was the best, that was the most rewarding thing I've ever done with my life was to be a stepdad to that little girl.
right.
Oh, my
That's
favorite. Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Actually, I talk about it in my stand up still, my last special, because I was talked about how I told myself back then, because we broke up. There was a lot of me and the mom, a lot of fighting, just a couple crazy people trying to make it work, you know. But then what was it? I knew that I wanted to do something like this too. And she was always like, "Well, where do me and Chloe fit into this?" And I was like, "I don't know if you do. Like, I don't know, man. Like, pretty selfish of me to quit my job if we're gonna try to have a family and I'm just gonna drive around in this van and be like, chase the dream, you know?" So we
Yeah.
decided it was best to go our separate ways. But I remember it was so rewarding that I was like, dude, if somehow I end up single and alone and I'm 35, I'm like, I want to adopt a little girl because I just loved that little girl so much. And then I was like, dude, you can't adopt a little girl.
Not living in a van in the
Yeah,
woods.
exactly. You just come over, you're like, I'm looking for a 1 to 5 year old. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
just put
you
her
have
in
to
the
move to the
van.
suburbs.
Just throw her in the yeah. I'm like, dude, I'm
You
gonna
could move to the suburbs and get a boyfriend,
yeah,
and then you can adopt a daughter.
yeah,
That would be the prerequisites.
yeah. I need a permanent place for this RV. Take the tires off, park it somewhere, and then we'll think about it.
Yes,
That's funny.
awesome.
Awesome. Well, how what do you got on the books for stand up? What do you got coming up? Are you planning on doing
Yeah, so
doing?
I'm
Like
moved
what do you
this
want to
week. So I did 2 mics last night because I got to do 2 mics a week.
yeah,
I move on Friday. I get my new apartment, so I'm moving there. And I there's a monthly stand up at the Golden Hoosier here in town on Sunday that I'll hit if my move goes well, um,
right.
and I'm up to it. So, but I've got I can do 2 mics a week easy.
Yeah.
I can take my boxing tenacity and entrepreneurship tenacity and put it towards that, and I think on the other side of discipline becomes abundance. So,
Right.
um,
Dude, that's what my whole belief is. That's what I did with comedy. Like I grew up playing competitive hockey and I was like, dude, I really just believe everything is time and effort. Like I think we all have different starting points, but like it's just time and effort create a trajectory. And then it's like how long you're willing to do something and how much effort you're willing to put in, and then that's where you're gonna end up, you know? And that's what I took from my hockey into my comedy.
yeah, the number of kids that I train to box that are naturally talented but don't have the discipline that end up getting beat by a goober that had no hand-eye coordination but puts in the discipline, that goober wins every time
Yeah.
after putting it in. And when I could see that so clearly when I teach these kids how to fight, that it just there's no other definition. It's just that simple. Keep
Yeah,
moving
well,
forward.
that's why I think you can also You talked about like starting late, like starting comedy later in life, and I really think that you can everyone, I don't know, goes at their own pace kind of thing. But like with life experience and things, like you can turbocharge through that, like you don't have to be doing this 30 years to be like, oh, I'm now a professional stand-up comedian. Like I think you could get out there and exactly like with your mindset and your things from your entrepreneurship and from your boxing, you can make big leaps, dude, in a short period of time.
Absolutely. And even if you don't, the thing that struck me about comedy so quickly and writing for comedy is that even if you don't ever want to get on stage, take a couple hours a week and just try to think of funny shit. Like it is so good for your brain
Yeah.
to to look at things and try to make them funny when we live in a world of just pay the bills and get to, hit the alarm clock and do this shit, right? And go through that grind that um profound stuff will start happening in your mind if you step back and try to put it in a lens of humor.
Yeah.
And I think it's really good for any human to do, regardless if you're ever going to step on stage or not.
Yeah. Anytime I come up with a joke, I say it's a good day. Like anytime that I've like sit down, I try write like the one-liners because I still every once in a while try and be like, okay, we're just gonna write five one-liners today. And anytime I come up with a joke from that, I laugh and I'm like, it's a good day, dude. Today was pretty good.
Yeah. And then you start like looking for stuff, right? And
Yeah.
your day, you're more observant, you're living your life a little bit. It's like drugs without the hangover, kind of.
Yeah,
Right?
well, that's what I
More
find. I
aware.
get I get little dopamine hits from doing the writing, and I try to do it first thing in the morning. And then exactly like you said, when I do it first thing in the morning, then as I go throughout my day, my brain is kind of primed for funny. So then I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny. Or like, what's this?
Yeah.
Like,
It's way better than oh shit, I got to duck all the time. Like what's
yeah.
going to happen bad and what am I going to get in trouble for, right?
Yeah, and
Uh,
I think our brains are programmed for that. Like I always thought about that being a mechanic at the mill, like an instrumentation mechanic or even a engineer, you're looking for what's going to go wrong or what has gone wrong. So you're always like, oh, this is broken, we got to fix it. And then even if stuff isn't broken, you're looking, trying to be like, hey, what's going to break next? And what do I got to worry about? So I think it primes your brain for this very negative thing where you're just hooked on these negative views and by doing that writing with the comedy, it's like a complete 180 and flips it. And you're like, all right, what's cool? What's kind of funny here? What are we doing?
and it's cool. It's good for your head. And if you, especially if you're in, like I do engineering work, right? Data center is all, one is none and two is one kind of world.
Yeah, yeah,
24/7, 365 doesn't matter. And so being in that mindset gets you kind of grumpy, right?
yeah,
And I would urge like, if you're a leader, public speaker, anything, that's my just look for funny shit and
yeah,
try to
dude.
turn the narrative into something more funny than what reality's bringing you.
I think that's a good closing line, Ken. I think there. Look for funny shit. That's I should write that on my little wall over here on my fridge. I write these quotes. I'll put it on there. Ken Cox, look for funny shit. Like,
That's my
so
next
Ken,
t-shirt.
it's been awesome chatting with you, man. Where can people get a hold of you and where should people go?
Yeah, for my comedy, it's coxout.com, coxout.com. And if you just want to know more about me personally, kencox.com. Boom.
Awesome. Cool, man. That's very quick and easy. And you're on Instagram, I assume, and Facebook and all this stuff.
Yes, I am on all those things. I am underscore Ken Cox on
I am underscore Ken Cox. All
on
right.
most of those platforms. Yes.
Amazing. Well, dude, thank you so much for taking the time and look forward to chatting to you again.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, take care. Bye.